Not sure where you're going to be listening to this episode of Coast to Coast Pinball, dear listener, friends. But if you can, kick back, relax, dim the lights with me. It's late. It's past midnight on the East Coast. I'm right next to JFK Airport in Queens on Long Island in New York. And, I don't know, episode 18. Here we go. Welcome to Coast to Coast Pinball. This is Nate Shivers. This is a podcast. It's a commentary. And I'm a man out of quarters. Long day of travel. Got up really earlier than normal. Kissed Teresa goodbye. Kissed the dog goodbye. Kissed the cat goodbye. 2 out of the 3 of those are not true. And got on my plane. I met the wrestler Bill Goldberg in the San Diego airport this morning. Just random. Almost ran right into him at the little cafe. I'm kind of a wrestling geek at heart, and that was neat. Not as big as I thought he'd be. I met Triple H, also a wrestler, in an airport about 5 years ago, and he was giant. But, I don't know, kind of a weird way to start the day. I was so tired. I'm staring at the guy like, I know this guy. Have I worked with this guy? How do I know him? Like, oh yeah, pro wrestler. So, good stuff. This is a quick trip. This is like a 5-day trip, and I'm doing some events for my job out here, and there will be time for pinball. I'm not exactly sure when. For certain, Sunday is wide open. I was supposed to golf with a client of mine who had to cancel, so I have Sunday wide open. So I sort of switched my hotel reservations this evening to make way for a trip to Asbury Park so I can visit the Silver Ball Museum, which is one of my favorite pinball locations in the country. Great variety of games. Leans heavy on the EMs. They do have some modern stuff. Games are usually in really good shape. And it's free play or unlimited play for one fee, I guess I should say. So $20 on Sunday will get me literally hours and hours and hours and hours of pinball. And there's some really good food right down there. And it's summertime at the boardwalk in Asbury Park, so there's probably people all over. I have not been to the Silver Ball Museum in the summer yet, so this will be an interesting trip. My conundrum on this trip is tomorrow, because I have a meeting with one of my biggest accounts out here on Long Island, biggest account in the whole territory, and that could end up taking most of the day, so I didn't really book anything late in the day because that often goes real long, or it could be really quick. It might be an hour and a half, and I might be left with a wide open Friday. And I actually thought about going to Asbury Park tomorrow because they've got super late summer hours at the Silver Ball Museum till 2 a.m., which I think is awesome. But then I remembered I used to live on the East Coast, and traffic towards the beaches on Friday afternoons is not something I want to deal with, so I won't be doing that. My thoughts now are, since I'll be on Long Island, I could drive down to Brooklyn and do sort of a Brooklyn pinball crawl and just sort of hop between bars and places that have some games, and there's quite a few. In fact, there's Sunrise Laundromat that I want to hit up, so that's probably what I'm going to do. My other thought was go back into Manhattan, into the city proper, and maybe revisit Reciprocal and whatnot. But I think for the sake of nothing else for the podcast and doing some research, I should do the Brooklyn thing and go around and play some games. So it's kind of what I'm leaning towards. My other thought is to head up where I'm going to be on Saturday, which is actually north of the city, up towards Connecticut, but not quite to Connecticut, and see what's up there. There's got to be something up there. I just haven't looked yet. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I listened to the Pinball Podcast on my flight, Don and Jeff's Pinball Podcast, which is one of my favorites. And another very nice mention. They like my name, Nate Shivers. They think that's a good name. So I was made fun of just relentlessly as a child for having the last name of Shivers. I heard Shiver Me Timbers and all sorts of other stuff. So hey, who knew I'd be here in my 30s thinking it was a great name for a pinball podcast. So that was cool. I really liked their podcast. I thought their commentary and opinions were very interesting on this episode. I liked it a lot. So very cool. I'm always excited when one of the other big podcasts pops up on my little downloadable MP3 podcast player, all part of my iPhone. So yeah. I did play some more virtual pinball in the Pinball Arcade program on my flight today. I played mostly Cactus Canyon because I just haven't played it very much. I've never seen one in real life. And I wanted to sort of, learn the game a little bit, and I want to play that game for real soon. And I know where a couple are around the country that I'd definitely like to go get to and spend some time on, because it's really, I love that era where they were doing original themes and had dialed in modern pinball to the point where they did at the Cactus Canyon time period. I just think it's neat, and that Western theme is very cool. So that was fun. Been playing that a lot. Also played Flight 2000 a little bit. Not as cool as Cactus Canyon, but that's just me. So got up to my hotel, spent some time with a couple other coworkers who just also happened to randomly be staying in the same hotel as me. Came up here and started reading the Pinside forums.
Forum static.
Very interesting topic going on right now on the Pinside forums, and it's sort of something I have thought about addressing before as a topic and backed off of, because I don't know, it's maybe not interesting to everybody. To me, it sort of is. And this specific posting, which is going now, is entitled "Changes from Stern, Prepare to Pay More." So obviously, I think when I saw that title, I was imagining a price increase or some sort of minimum sale price being forced on, dealers, that type of thing. And what it actually was a distributor posting that they had received an email from Stern basically saying that due to the increased and renewed popularity in pinball, Stern had decided to go to fewer dealers who do more business. Basically cut out the little small guys who are dealers or distributors for Stern Pinball. It said it saves them money that way, et cetera, et cetera. They were going to honor any open back orders and continue to offer service and parts through the end of 2014. And then in sort of a weird move, it encouraged a distributor, if you need games, go through one of our largest distributors, etc. So the thread then kind of was met with some people saying what I thought in my head, which was, this is probably a good thing for Stern, streamlining the business. It was met with some people who were upset, saying, why cut out the little guys, yada, 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 yada. I deal with this sort of thing with my line of work all the time. It's basically what I do. My company, we sell high-end acoustic guitars, and we have a dealer base around the United States of roughly 500 dealers. So we're on a larger scale than Stern is. But let's just say Stern has 100 distributors or dealers, and I don't know what their number is. I'm not sure, and I don't think it's actually that high. But let's just say they have 100, and they're looking at their total sales creeping up. But you have this, and this is what we deal with in my business all the time, and you have this percentage of distributors who are the bottom guys, and it's the old 80-20 rule, is that 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. That's pretty common in sales, and especially from wholesaling, like we're talking about. So you'll have your big guys doing most of your business. Well, you end up with these sort of bottom guys who are not doing a lot of business. And this guy who received this email has one game on back order. He actually posted the whole email and showed that he had one AC/DC premium still on order. And that's not to say he doesn't have a room full of all the games available right now, but I'm just kind of going to guess that he or most of the people receiving this email do not. And I'm picturing this as more of guys who might have a game or two on order for them to sell, or mainly only order games from Stern when they can sell a game to a customer. And that's one way of doing business. However, what my company and most companies in my industry, in the musical instrument industry, have adopted is we want dealers who show our products off to the public in showrooms. So we want a certain level of visibility to the product out in the field, and we have minimum stocking requirements for our dealers. And if our dealers don't agree or continue to have those minimum stocking requirements, then we don't do business with them. And it does, I saw a lot of comments in the thread saying that, what difference does it make to Stern if they have 7 or 70 dealers? It's just computer programs. And that's just simply not true. And I deal with this all the time. I had to break ties with a longtime dealer for my company recently who actually said, what does it matter if I don't have the minimum and I just order a few guitars in here and there? What does it really hurt? Well, I'll tell you what happens. And I guarantee you this is part of the reason Stern is making this move. I don't think it has to do with just cost cutting, because it's not so much of a cost cutting as it is a time drain for sure. If you have a certain amount of sales reps with a certain amount of dealers, and you have this bottom 20% of your dealers, or however many it is doing only 20% of your business, it's a time drain. It's a resource drain. You spend money on marketing materials and emailing and phone calls and service and stuff like that. So it does cost money to have more dealers. But what I think really probably drove this is you have guys who are not really deeply invested in your product line. So let's say I'm a pinball distributor and I have a showroom and I'm in Topeka, Kansas, and I've just picked that city out of the air. And I have 25 games in my showroom, and 10 of them are brand new Stern games that I'm trying to sell. 10 of them. So I have every game currently in production in both Pro version and premium or limited edition version, if there are limited editions available. And I have them set up to play so that people can then come in, play my showroom games, and then I either sell them off the showroom or I order them new, depending on the customer and what the deal is. Those showroom models probably are going to get discounted more so than a brand new in a box one. And I'm trying to sell these at a certain profit margin, because what gets lost on a lot of consumers in both the pinball hobby and I think in the musical instrument hobby is the people who are those middlemen that are actually doing the selling for Stern. They got to make money, because if they don't make enough money, they can't get the games from Stern to sell them to you. And a lot of people say, well, Stern should go direct. Stern's not going to go direct. There's too many problems dealing direct to consumer. Way too many problems. So you have a distributor network. And you want your games out in showrooms, quite honestly. You want people to be able to go see them. And I know we don't do that as much in pinball right now, but I think that's coming down the road. I think you'll see more of that. Big showrooms where people can really go demo games and buy games. And there is some of that for sure, but it's not everywhere. But so let's say I'm my guy in Topeka, and I have 10 brand new Stern games and a mix of used games or maybe other new manufacturers popping up. Well, I have these 10 games, and I'm trying to sell them, and I'm trying to make, and I'm going to be full disclosure here. I'm going to speak in profit margins and numbers and percentages that are literally also pulled out of the air. I don't know what the markup is on a pinball machine. I'm going to say that, let's say every pinball machine on my floor is retail price $5,000. That's the suggested retail price from Stern. And let's say I pay exactly half of that. I'm paying $2,500. I don't know if that's what the case is, if it's a 50% markup or a 100% markup, depending on how you look at it, from Stern. But I'm just going to throw it out there because that is a common markup in lots of different industries. So I have $2,500 invested in each of these, and I'm trying to sell these for retail price, $49.99 plus tax, whatever. And the floor models might get 10% discounted. So I'm making that much money. And I'm trying to sell 10, 20 games a year. If I sell 10 games a year and make $2,500 per game, I only made $25,000 selling brand new pinball machines. It's not a lot of money to operate a business on. So if you sell 20, it's 50. You're still not talking about anybody getting rich here. Well, let's say there's a guy in the next state over. What's the next state over from Kansas? Let's say Oklahoma. So I got a guy over in Oklahoma. He's in Oklahoma City. And he has a little pinball repair shop. And he buys some used games, fixes them up, and sells them on Craigslist. And he called up Stern about 3 years ago when pinball really wasn't as hot and offered to be a Stern distributor and promised he'd sell some games. So he's now a Stern distributor. And he can buy games too. He has one game in his store right now. He has a Avengers machine. That's all. He has one Avengers machine. But he will gladly order you any game you want from Stern as long as you put a deposit down so that he can then pay Stern. So he has no real investment in this. And if you call him and say, well, look, I can buy the floor model over in Topeka for 10% off the $49.99. What can you do for me? And he says, oh, 10% off? I'll gladly give you 15% off if you give me the business. And you say, okay, great. So now the profit margin just went down. Well, let's say somebody gets really smart and says, okay, 15% off. Can I get a quote on that? Yeah, okay, quote. You go back to your guy in Topeka and say, well, this guy will sell me one for 15% off brand new in a box from Stern. And you're trying to sell me the floor model for 10% off? Well, the guy in Topeka may want the business. So he'll say, okay, I'll give you 20% off. And now we're in a race to the bottom of pricing. And this is happening because you have a guy in Oklahoma City who has no investment, nothing on the line. His income is not from selling Stern pinball machines. His income is from repairing and flipping games. And that's a problem. I hope you can see how that works. So I guarantee you what's happening is people who are able to survive on much smaller profit margins are driving the price of new games down, and the larger companies who have a lot of money invested and are running bigger businesses and are probably likely doing a lot of the business for Stern would like to make more money on the machines they're selling, or would like to just not have to match crazy low offers, etc., and they're complaining. And if you look at that, it's a no-brainer for Stern, because remember, Stern gets the same amount of money for all of these games. So look at it like this also. Are these small distributors and small dealers creating demand for Stern Pinball? I don't believe so. I think the demand is coming from Stern Pinball and the games. And if you can show me an instance of where a distributor is causing the demand for pinball, I'll be shocked. I do see it in the musical instrument industry where you have things like Guitar Center, this mega 250 store chain around the country that markets and advertises and creates excitement for products, and they actually do cause sales. That's not what's happening in pinball. In pinball, it's the game and the community building the excitement. Now, are pinball games occasionally sold just because that price does get so low? Yeah, I think there's some percentages, but that's not the majority. It's simply not. And remember, a lot of games go out on route still. Not all of them, or I'd love to know the percentage of what goes to the home versus goes out on route, but I think we've talked about this on the podcast before. The percentage going into the home is definitely rising. So what is the value of these little distributors for Stern? Right now, in an up market where there's demand being created, there's not much value. And that's why this is a no-brainer situation. It's a decision that happens in all industries all over the place. When you get into the next subject that kind of came up in this thread, the limited edition problem conundrum, I think it's real easy to, as a customer, as a consumer, to say, I think Stern should just sell the limited editions of these games direct. And that way there's no shenanigans. Because we've seen shenanigans where we have distributors who have access to these limited editions, like the Metallica limited editions. They buy them. They don't sell them right away. They sit on them, and then they let the demand drive the going price up on these, because 500 units in a growing hobby that's not a lot, and especially if you get a theme that's hot like Metallica. So now I buy one of these games, and let's say the limited editions are $8,000. I'm just using round numbers. So I paid $4,000. I paid 50% for this $4,000, $8,000 machine. I paid $4,000 for it, and I'm just going to sit on it till I can sell it on a third-party website, on Pinside or on eBay or on Craigslist, for $9,000 above MSRP. And I may not sell it as the distributor. I may not advertise that I'm Topeka Game Rooms or Oklahoma City Game Rooms or whatever. I'm just going to sell it as Bob. Bob's got a new in-box Metallica LE, and I'm selling it for $9,000. Well, that's bad too, because now you're creating an inflation on something that Stern probably doesn't want. Stern cannot control what their games are sold for generally. You get into price fixing situations, and that's not good. So you can't tell a distributor what to sell for. There are instances where you have policies for a minimum sales price, like Colgate policies they call them, because of toothpaste lawsuits from a long time ago, but that's not what's currently going on in pinball. So what you have, though, is all these distributors clamoring for these LEs. And the big guys want the LEs. And let's say the little guys get a few of them, and they're the ones sitting on them. So now they're causing even more problems, because that's how they're going to make all this money. They're going to buy the $4,000 machine and try and make $5,000 on that machine or whatever. Well, I think that the easy thing to say as a consumer is, I'll just buy it direct from Stern. It's the first 500 people that order it, yada, 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 yada. But the problem with that is you have these big distributors who are doing all this business with you, and those 500 LEs, whatever percentage of them that they get, those are easy sales. Those are like the locked-in, easy sales. I'm glad you're a dealer. I'm glad you support me. I'm glad you have a Transformers Pro model sitting on your floor. Here's 2 Metallica LEs that you're going to flip instantly so that you're profitable selling our Stern products. That stuff's vital, and we do that at my company too. We have limited editions that we sell, and our best dealers get them. I will oftentimes only offer them to 10% of my dealer base if it's something really limited, because I want those people who are already supporting my company to get those sales, and that keeps them healthy and keeps them thriving, keeps them wanting to do more. And that way, when it comes time for me to say, hey, look, I'm sitting on this, run of whatever, and I need you to stock a few of these so we can sell them through the channel. You're my dealer. You need to sell these. Well, Stern might be sitting on a bunch of extra, like I said, Transformer Pros maybe. Or they might have a bunch of Avengers in another 6 months, and they're going to call up their distributors and say, look, we gave you the Metallica LEs, we gave you the Metallica Premiums, it sold really great. I need you to stock one more of these Avengers so we can get these out of here. We need to sell these. Help us out. And that's how business works. The distributors and the dealers need to make money. So I know that sometimes we're all hunting for the best deal, and this hobby especially is like that because we're buying so much stuff sort of, used and vintage, and you get in this market of gotta buy cheap. Well, if we all bought super, super cheap new in box, it would not be good for a lot of people who are putting their skin in the game and trying to, run the industry of selling new pinball machines. So that's my opinion. That's my thoughts. Good on Stern. I think it's a good move. And we'll see how it plays out. I get a lot of emails requesting topics, and far and away the segment of our show that has gotten the most emails that are kind of simple and just asking me to do more of, or I really like this, is definitely where we talk about a machine that's rising in popularity and or value, and a machine that's declining in popularity and or value. And we call that going up, going down.
Going up?
Going down.
Going up. I can almost hardly believe that we're going to talk about this, but it's roller games. I can't get on Pinside or look on other forums. Well, let's be real, it's mostly Pinside. That's where the traffic is. But roller games is just like come out of nowhere to be this really highly talked about game. I hear it on other podcasts. I see it on the forums. Really? Roller games? So I'm going to tell you a little roller game story. If you don't know roller games is a 1990 Williams game designed by Steve Ritchie. Pretty cool. It's based off of a television show from late 80s, early 90s called Roller Games. I used to love this show. It was my favorite TV show in like the 5th grade. I was on Saturday afternoons or maybe Sunday afternoons on like channel 40 on UHF on my TV, and it was right before American Gladiators. And American Gladiators was okay, but I loved Roller Games. So Roller Games is, if you don't know, it was a worked or a fake television show about roller derby. And roller derby from way back in the day was a real sport. But this was a sort of dramatized pro wrestling meets roller derby TV show where you had these teams going against each other, and they often had bands that played on the show. Like I very clearly remember being so excited for Warrant being on Roller Games and playing a song. So it's that era. Big hair, makeup, the whole deal. This was sort of happening as that trend of look and style and music was all dying away. But I loved the show, and it only ran for a year or two at the most, I think. Well, they made a pinball machine about it. And I've heard the story that they actually were offered, might have been the same production company maybe, or maybe this is just rumor or hearsay, but I heard that Williams chose between Roller Games or American Gladiators and picked Roller Games, which in hindsight you're like, well, American Gladiators was a much more successful show that eventually even came back on. But if you think about the themes, Roller Games was all based on kind of fast-moving. The roller derby rink was normally, I think, a figure 8, but the Roller Games one had a ramp, had like a big up vertical ramp thing. So it was really cool, and it made a lot of sense for a pinball machine. So they made a fair amount of these games. They made almost 5,000 of these games. It's a System 11 game. Like we said, Steve Ritchie did this game. this game came out right after Whirlwind, which is a fantastic game, top 50 game there, and it came right before Diner and Funhouse, which are also two very highly acclaimed games. Funhouse being, obviously a top 20 game to a lot of people. It's a fun game though, and I remember the artwork was the first thing that caught my eye in this game the first time I saw it, was just how aged it looked. When you look at roller games, you get the big blonde hair and kind of the 80s, 90s looking guy with the perfect Tom Cruise like hair, but he's all buff. It's sort of dated looking. There's a lot going on the playfield. There's lots of inserts. The lights flash a lot. There's actually sponsors listed on the playfield, like a sporting event like Burger King, and I don't remember all the rest of them, but some of them are so very 80s, 90s, it's hilarious. But this game actually had some very cool design elements. It's fast. It has kind of an open lower playfield half. The neat shot that I think a lot of people think about when they play roller games and then think back on it is there's like a saucer shot where you can hit and the ball will catch in there, and then I think it gives you a randomized reward. But then there's a vertical up kicker that kicks it up through a wire form and drops it down. There's an upper right flipper, so it drops the ball down in front of that, and the ball rolls and stops on a magnet. And when it hits the saucer to start this, you get the little vocal cue that says, "Don't flip." It yells, "Don't flip" at you. And it's kind of like, what? Don't flip. And then the ball goes up through the wire form, down, drops in front, and the magnet holds it, and then they yell, "Flip." And you're flipping, trying to hit the vertical ramp shot. So it's pretty cool. It's got some good stuff going on. Cool wire forms, magnet shots. It's just so retro when you look at this game. It's so dated looking, but that's okay. I looked at this game. It's going way up in value right now. More than that, even though there's just a lot of talk about this game, and I see people, looking for them, like actively looking to find roller games, which surprises me a little bit. But when you stop and think about it, it's a Steve Ritchie game, and Steve Ritchie's, he's a stud. He's one of the big 4 or 5 guys in the history of this whole thing. Maybe it shouldn't surprise me that it's sort of being sought out like that. It plays good. It has neat stuff, and here's more than anything else. So we were talking about this came out in the same year as Whirlwind, Diner, and Funhouse. All pretty well valued games. Well, this game, if you look at the Boston Pinball eBay sales history tracker, in the 60-month history, the average eBay price for this game was only $765. So there's a lot of value in this game. This year, there's been 3 sold on eBay for an average price of $1,128. So it's definitely gone up. It's gone up 30-some%. But it's still a very affordable game to get a modern solid-state game. Steve Ritchie designed System 11 game. So, you can't go wrong if you can get this thing for $1,000, I think, and you have space for some games. I would not want this game to be my only game because the music would drive me absolutely insane. The theme song on the pinball, and I don't remember if this is the theme song on the television show, but it just says rock and roller games over and over. So I think this is definitely one of those games that is going to keep going up in value as people sort of see, what they're getting for their money, and as more games get, gobbled up into collections. So that was going up. Going down. I almost hate to say this because I just, on a recent podcast, said how much I like this game. No Good Gophers. So hear me out on this, because you might not agree. I think when I say, No Good Gophers, you're thinking, what are you talking about? It's a 1997 Williams game. Okay, so it came out in 97. And let's just look at the hard, cold numbers. They only built 2,700 of these, so there's not a ton of these games out there. There's more roller games out there. It's a very late model, so it's very full-fleshed out. But let's look at the numbers on the Boston eBay tracking. The average price of this game for the past 60 months was $2,375. And these are eBay examples, and they, you get the crazy high-priced ones occasionally, and you get the broken-down, beat-up ones occasionally. But that's a 60-month average. The average price in 2013 on this game, with less than 6 sold, I think it was like 5, is $2,332. So it actually went down in selling price. And if you consider what most games from this era have done price-wise, any game that has gone literally down from the 60-year or 60-month mark to the current year, that's pretty bad. Flat is really down in my eyes. In fact, gains below 20% is kind of unusual right now if you look at a lot of other, late model Williams games. So that's sort of interesting. It's still ranked number 35 on the Pinside Top 100. That says to me that people that own the game rate it really, really highly, because it is a theme that could, I think, cause some division with folks. It's a golf theme, but it's a fun golf theme. It's got gophers, Bud and Buzz. Come on. So this game came out in the same year as Medieval Madness and Circus Voltaire. Games both skyrocketing in price. However, the fourth Williams game that year was NBA Fast Break, which is another game that's sort of hanging out and not growing in price a whole lot. So maybe sports themes are not long-term great investments. A little insight, just a thought. I think No Good Gophers does suffer a little bit in a home collection, and maybe this is why it hasn't totally been jumping up in value. The rule set's not all that deep. You're playing around a golf. There are gophers popping up you're trying to hit in the face and then get low scores in the golf. It has a really cool shot. It has one of the coolest shots in pinball, the hole-in-one shot, which if you don't know, there's this slam ramp that kicks down and then you shoot the ramp and the ball goes airborne over into the hole-in-one target. It's a pretty hard shot to hit. Very, very cool, though. And there's some videos out there. I think Bowen Kerins actually has a video out there where he just hits the shot over and over because he's a badass. So I think that there's probably some people who tire of this game quickly. It has a spinner on it, kind of like Whirlwind. This is a Pat Lawler design, like Whirlwind was. I believe this was Pat Lawler's final full credited game at Williams. I mean, he worked on some of the Pinball 2000 stuff, but this was his final, game with Williams. The spinner's pretty cool. You can treat it more like a roulette wheel type thing where it gives you different prizes or different awards based on where you stop it with the flippers. So there's some neat stuff going on in this. I like this game a lot. The fact is though that they're not selling for what people are asking for. I see a few tagged really high on eBay, like a lot of other games that have been there for a long time. Telltale signs of a game maybe not rising in popularity or value. I also did a nationwide eBay search on them. You can see where ones have sold that were tagged under $3,000, but anything over $3,000 doesn't seem to sell. In fact, there's one on Pinside right now for $3,000. Somebody has a post up right now that looks pretty good. There's one locally on Craigslist for me, just over $3,000. Sounds like there's room to wiggle. So, No Good Gophers, I think it's sort of going down. I think if you're looking for late model DMD Williams games, No Good Gophers would be a good one for value. So I don't think this is going down because it's a bad game, maybe a unattractive theme to some. And, on the bright side of this, the ones that I see, the cabinets on these games, they don't fade as much as a lot of other games. They always seem to be pretty bright and colorful. So that's something nice to think about too, which, would maybe help you hold value of the game. But so there's going up and going down. Ah, yes, the mailbag. So I had quite a few nice emails from the last show, but we're going to highlight a couple that had really good questions here. First is from Anthony. Anthony wrote and said, do you have a favorite pre-DMD solid-state game on your want list? Anthony, my problem is my want list is ridiculous. Basically, print out the Pinside Top 200, X off a few key games, and that is my want list. So I started just kind of browsing through games and looking, because I know there are some, and there's ones on there for different reasons, certainly. I'm a big DMD fan, but I do, I love solid state games, whatever they call them, digital matrix, dot matrix, yada, alphanumeric, whatever you want to call it. I like those too. And the ones that jump out at me first are Whirlwind and Elvira and the Party Monsters. Those are both games that I really enjoy playing. I've not played either one of those to death, so those both feel very fresh and new to me when I do get to play them. So those are both would be on my want list, and I would go out of my way if I found a deal on one of those. Funhouse, of course. I mean, Funhouse is just so great. The music, the slightly creepy vibe, fun shots. It's a hard game. That's always something I'm going to lean towards, is games that I find sort of difficult. And Funhouse has always been difficult for me. So that would definitely be on there. That's one just kind of like sort of, the Hall of Fame collection to me. And I don't mean, the Las Vegas Hall of Fame or the other Hall of Fames popping up. I just mean, like, if I had to put a time capsule of 10 games, Funhouse would be on there for sure. So that's on there. And then, sort of the dark horse for me would be Black Hole. I love the art on Black Hole. I like the creepy sounds. I actually like the way it plays. I'm also a big Haunted House fan, but I hate to even admit this because I like Haunted House so much. I enjoy playing Black Hole a little bit better. I think there's just some fantastic design elements. Laura Playfield's done so cool. So that's also a game, and there's others, but those were the ones that sort of popped out in my mind. Tom wrote to me, love the podcast, listen to all of them in 1 week. That's a lot of me in your head. I apologize, Tom. Thoughts, what were your thoughts on someone trying to open their very own arcade/barcade? Well, that's a scary proposition. If I was infinitely wealthy, I would probably do it very quickly. Obviously, location is going to be the biggest thing in the world. Where are you? I mean, he didn't tell me where he was, but if you're, emailing me from New York City, maybe, tough proposition. But at least you have the people there. So if you really can, catch lightning in a bottle, you could succeed. If you were emailing me from, Tombstone, Arizona, probably a bad idea. I just don't think you'll make the money. I think before I jumped headfirst into opening an arcade or a pinball, museum or anything like that, I would really try and get a good business plan together. Sort of, I would do some research. I would call other owners and operators and find out what money they're actually making. If it was my only way to make money, I would be scared to death. Do you want to serve food? Do you want to have a restaurant, bar, arcade? I think that's a good idea if you have some angle on it where you can generate money from more than one way. Who's going to tech your stuff? How are you going to buy the collection? Do you already have the collection? If you already own the collection, I think it makes it a lot easier. Maybe you find another business that wants to expand a little bit and you team up. Depends on what you're doing. If this is going to be it for you and like every day you're going to wake up and for you going to make the donuts means going to run the arcade, that's tough. That's a tough one. So, me personally, to me, that's like a retirement job. So I could see myself one day, like when I'm older and want to retire, maybe I own a little strip mall, pinball house, arcade type thing. I think that would be pretty neat, depending on where I end up. I live in San Diego, and I think it's wide open for something like that if you're in the right location. So, I don't know. Are you really thinking about that, Tom? Let me know. And then the other one was David wrote, I'm really enjoying the podcast. I wish you could do it daily. That will not happen. I'm averaging like 2 to 3 a week right now. More usually when I'm on the road, just because oftentimes Teresa and I hang out and do stuff in the evenings when I'm home, and then I got to go to bed. But I appreciate that. I do listen to a couple podcasts that are daily. I listen to the 404 CNET podcast, which is a daily podcast, but those guys work in an office. They work in tech in New York City, and they have a podcast studio right there, and they jump in. And I don't know if I'd have enough to talk about daily. Daily, Monday through Friday, even would be incredibly difficult to fill. Some people thought I would run out of stuff by now already as often as I'm going, and we haven't yet. But daily would be tough. Thank you. His actual question, though, was, what do I think drives up the price of older pinball machines more, theme or gameplay? That's a really complex question because I think in every game it's sort of different, and I think the third item there is quantity produced or collectability / how rare they are. So if you like catch magic in a bottle, like Medieval Madness, where there weren't a whole lot of them produced, the gameplay is awesome and the theme is awesome, you get crazy prices. If you have something like roller games, where I think the gameplay is actually really good, but the theme is, to some a slight atrocity. To them, I would say relax, it's fun, but to some a slight atrocity, you get $1,000 game. Funhouse. There's a great example. Funhouse and roller games, same year. I mean, obviously they play differently, but Funhouse was this original, creepy, awesome theme that has sort of stood the test of time, and it had some features that were just really amazing. Obviously, the head and everything. Price goes way up. So it's a great question. I really, part of me just wants to yell out theme really loudly. That theme kind of wins over, but it's not completely true. I'll have to think about this, and maybe we'll talk about this more next episode if I remember. Really awesome themes with kind of dud games. Because there's got to be some, and I just need to think about them in the modern era and go through it and look at it. But good question. Good question. If we look at the modern stuff that's out right now, Metallica is a theme that I think is fantastic, but I hear a lot of people saying, they're not huge Metallica fans, but they love the game. So then it says, well, maybe it's gameplay. Well, but the art package plays a lot into that. So is that the theme? Yeah, that's the theme, the art. That's helping there. Interesting one, though. Appreciate the feedback. You can always email me directly at coast2coastpinball@gmail.com, and that's coast, the number 2, coastpinball@gmail.com. We have a website. Feel free to go to the website, check out the photos we post, check out the blog. I don't do a ton on the blog, just little updates here and there, sort of what's going on. We're going to talk more about Team Coast to Coast coming up in future episodes. And, feel free to check out the website. It's coast2coastpinball.com. Twitter, at C2C Pinball. Facebook's out there. Just Google us if you want to find all that good stuff. I really appreciate you listening. I'm going to go to bed and go to work and do all that good stuff. So I hope you're all well, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks a lot. I'm sorry, what? Ben Affleck is going to be Batman? You've got to be kidding me. Oh my gosh. Yikes.